Let's talk about this first story. And this one is one of the creepiest and strangest stories. From Newsweek, DARPA denies funding Wuhan Institute of Virology amid alleged document leak. They say, Newsweek cannot confirm the veracity of the drastic group or the existence of the Project Diffuse documents described. The group says the documents were provided anonymously. DARPA, the U.S. Advanced Research Projects Agency, has denied funding research at Wuhan, the Wuhan lab, after a group released documents allegedly detailing a coronavirus research proposal. They say Drastic is a group of activists who say they are working towards solving the riddle of the origins of SARS-CoV-2, and the virus that is behind COVID. They say they were given documents by an anonymous source, which detail something called Project Diffuse, according to what appear to be funding proposal excerpts published by Drastic. Project Diffuse aimed to reduce the threat of bat-borne coronaviruses through research and was headed by Peter Daszak, president of the U.S.-based research organization EcoHealth Alliance. It would have run between 2018 and 2022. Drastic states, the research proposal would have involved advanced and dangerous research into bat coronaviruses in cooperation with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and other facilities, and said the research would qualify as gain of function. A process can be used to make viruses more dangerous. However, Drastic to the documents showed that DARPA rejected the Diffuse proposal in part because of gain of function concerns. Specifically, they said something about we're not so sure about an aerosolized vaccine. The idea apparently was that they were going to make some kind of airborne aerosol that would take various coronavirus particles they would spray bats with, so the bats would develop some kind of immunity to it. And DARPA was like, that sounds really dangerous to do.
I'm with DARPA on this one.
Yeah, for once,
I'm going to go ahead and say I agree with DARPA.
I'm not a big fan of mass
Let's not go
medication
spraying
like
the vaccines into the bat caves.
It makes me think of fluoride in the water, like just dumping the medicine into the medium that we
Is there
that we
fluoride in the
breathe.
water? Really?
Yeah, I've heard.
Not here.
Oh, okay, good.
No, we have well water.
Better not
It
be
didn't
here.
used to
No
be,
fluoride.
but they started adding it, I think.
Fluoride in my coffee.
Yep, not everybody.
No
Some
fluoride
places don't, but we have well water. So plus
Excellent.
we have like a 9-stage filter or some ridiculous number. Yeah. So the article basically goes on to say like gain of function is really, really bad and all that stuff. They go on to then say in a statement in Newsweek, DARPA denied funding any activity associated with EcoHealth Alliance or the Wuhan Institute of Virology. A spokesman said, in accordance with the U.S. federal acquisition regulations, we are not at liberty to divulge who may have or may not have submitted a proposal in response to any of the agency's solicitations. Further information contained within bids is considered proprietary and can only be released by the bidder. That being said, DARPA has never funded directly nor indirectly and as a subcontractor any activity or researcher associated with EcoHealth Alliance or the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Why would Peter Daszak, he's the guy who spearheaded the Lancet article that said this is not from a lab. And now we hear that, according to these documents...
Who was then later kicked off the team, by the way.
Right. And now Lancet's like coming out with a statement, we should investigate because it looks like a lab leak.
In a serious and open debate.
So this guy who's trying to get funding from DARPA... Look, there's NIH is one thing with Fauci, being like, we would like to fund research in this area because you're the National Institutes of Health or whatever. It's another thing when you go to DARPA. I mean, what could they possibly be trying to do? Pitch to DARPA. Hey, you want a weapon? You want bioweapons?
You know, it's amazing because, I know Alex was here on Monday, but doesn't this sound like something that you'd hear on his show, right?
Yes.
And you'd be like, Alex,
he's
come
like,
on.
The Chinese were working with a U.S. firm and they went to DARPA with their documents and said we were going to be aerosolizing the bat caves. And it just he needs to be. Are you going to go for it?
He'd be like,
I'm telling people that the Chinese are coming to DARPA because the U.S. is working with China to spray the vaccine on the bats.
and I'm just like, Alex, slow down. Look,
They're gonna go into the caves.
We're gonna fact check this one.
Little bat.
And then I'm like, I really don't think the Chinese went to U.S. defense research projects to get to get money to do a lab to make gain of function bioweapons to spray bats. And I'll be like, Google it. And then I'd Google it and be like, from Newsweek.
Jamie, pull it up.
Wuhan Institute of Virology was, and EcoHealth Alliance was seeking money from DARPA to weaponize.
You're like, to weaponize the aerosolization, the human furin cleavage site of the... Okay, so this says that what Alex
checks out
was screaming about is entirely true. So get the jar, Jamie. Get the jar, and you put another coin in.
This is
jar.
Eco Health Alliance went to DARPA. Is this a Chinese or this is the American company, right?
When you look at the actual documents, and I've gone through this, and I do actually dig through it we talk about it on the podcast today, as well as at humanevents.com. Where we go a little deeper, and I was actually reading the table of contents on this because I've only been doing the podcast for like a week, but I'm trying to get canceled as fast as possible. So I started reading the actual table of contents in the leaked document, and I'm starting to go through it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can say this, and it was getting a little long. And we do a shorter version thing there, but they're talking about infectious experiments using entire captive bat colonies. They're visiting the caves. And the one that's really big, the introduction of human-specific cleavage sites. So do you remember when there was that big article that came out by the former New York Times reporter where it was sort of like the article that changed the conversation, at least for a lot of people out there.
Right, all of a sudden he was like,
hey, all of a sudden he was like, hey, we probably should talk about the lab leak because there's some weird things. Well, I actually went in and read like all 7,000 words of that because that's what I do. And there's a huge section where he said, okay, we're going to talk about science now. So for anybody who wants to talk science, this is that section. And one of the main things they were talking about was this human fern cleavage site. Like that's where I heard the phrase, was in that article. And so I'm looking it up. I'm talking to people that I know who have been in pharma and R&D, et cetera. And one of whom I'm sure is listening right now. And the thing that was very interesting to them was they said, we don't know how COVID-19 could have evolved this so specifically because it seems to be the perfect addition to a coronavirus. Because remember, so coronaviruses, there's not one coronavirus. That's a family name. So that's like a genus. That's like a family of a type of virus. Yeah. And so for COVID-19, they're just saying that we haven't seen another coronavirus with this specific feature to it, right? This specific function, to use a word, and and that's where gain of function actually comes from. That it doesn't have this function.
They gain functions.
No one had gained this function before. None of them, at least that they'd found. And so the point of it was this made the spike proteins essentially, because you always heard this early on, spike proteins, ACE2 receptors, spike proteins, ACE2 receptors. So our lungs, human lungs, have these ACE2 receptors. Well, what the Wuhan Institute of Virology was doing was they were humanizing mice. What were they doing with the mice? They were giving them the ACE2 receptors in their lungs. And so
trying to engineer the virus.
So to see if a chimeric virus could essentially be able to be inserted so they become transgenically more pathologically transmissible, they were enhancing the pathogenicity. I had to practice that one like 3 times in the mirror.
That's a good word.
Thank you for doing that.
To work it out. And so it's really interesting that, again, to everybody out there that's kind of following this at once more, and not to like delve too into it, you just see these same terms coming up again and again, both at looking at the science of what is COVID-19, what makes it so unique, what makes it so uniquely transmissible in humans, and then also these grant proposals that all are associated with the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
I want to read this from the Telegraph. They say DARPA refused to fund the work, saying, quote,
Thank you, DARPA.
It is clear that the proposed project led by Peter Daszak could have put local communities at risk, and warned that the team had not properly considered the dangers of enhancing the virus gain-of-function research or releasing a vaccine by air. Wow.
So DARPA was the voice of reason here.
Yeah.
DARPA saying, hey guys, let's just we're busy making
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So Daszak.
The original or the Burton?
The new one.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, the new one's all prequels though, right?
Yeah. So in the new one, you know what it's about?
Yeah, it was Caesar and all.
Yeah. So he makes a virus that
apes together strong.
Yeah. He makes a virus that enhances the intelligence and functions of the chimps, but then it turns out that virus kills humans. So the humans start dying off for the most part, and the apes are intelligent and building civilization. And I guess that's the prequel. In the future, the humans are all gone, and the apes are all smart or whatever.
Except for James Franco, but not anymore because
he does die from the virus. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay,
but there are some humans who are immune, and there's very few.
There was the guy from Zero Dark 30 is in one of them.
So you have DARPA basically being like, if you guys do a gain of function virus and then spray COVID particles on these animals, which then travel, you might destroy the planet. So consider. So we don't know, according to these documents, if they were. It doesn't say if they were actually funded. It says they were proposals. So maybe they went to Fauci, and Fauci
right.
was
And so
like,
the point that Drastic makes, and Drastic has had a lot of legitimate scoops and research that's come out they have an excellent track record when it comes to this. The point that they make, if you read their summary, is that, we're not trying to pin this on DARPA. We're interested in what type of research and what venues were they looking at, because as DARPA said in that disclosure statement that, hey, this is proprietary stuff, we're not actually allowed to share it because of the rules associated, which makes sense, right? If you're applying for a grant proposal, but if Moderna shares it and sends me a proposal and I share their grant proposal with J&J because maybe my buddy works at J&J and he said he'd give me some money if I did. Obviously you can think of the proprietary issues there, but the question is, what avenues of research were they looking into? What was going on? And then did they ever eventually get funding from NIH? Or, by the way, did they get just funding from the CCP, for example, to fund these lines of research? So again, we only have so far insight into what has been published from the Wuhan Institute. And we have better insight into what we funded, we being the U.S. government, the U.S. nation. But we don't really know. There's a whole black box surrounding that entire thing. And it seems like every time we get another leak, every time we get more documents, every time we dig up one of these statements that was made right in real time, when you go look at this, I pulled up that New York Times article from 2017 that says, well, it looks like we're going to be funding gain-of-function research now, which could produce more lethal viruses, right? New York Times.
I'm done playing games. Look, the Hunter Biden laptop story comes out, and immediately you get people on the right, of course, willing to start digging into it, trying to fact check it, verify a lot of the stuff, and it was almost immediately verified in a bunch of ways. Notably, Tony Bobulinski, who is like a confidant, being like, yeah, these emails are real, and it takes a year for the mainstream media to go, oh, they're real, by the way, and then people go, oh.
I still remember sitting there, and it was, Bannon gives us the hard drive, and that was with Raheem, and we were just sitting out at Morton's on the terrace, and he's like, oh, look at this video, and I'm like, God, don't show me that, we're in public, But I'm like, that's definitely Hunter Biden. So there's no question about that.
I'm not trying to rehash all of that because I see this snow story and I'm like, we knew this.
Right.
Yeah.
We knew this story was bunk. We knew Russiagate at a certain point was bunk. I was willing to entertain Russiagate. And then eventually I was just like, these people have lost their minds. It was getting crazier and crazier. Ukraine Gate was completely bunk. It's all been bunk. The media's lied about way too much.
But Tim, here's the thing, is I was going on every single day publicly during this period. So it was essentially 8 weeks before the election. And I say Jake Tapper, Maggie Haberman. I actually got into it on Twitter with Mark Cuban a little bit over this because he actually responded. I said, if you guys want to come and get a copy of this thing, I will let you sit down. I will give you full access to it. I'll let you make a copy of it. I'll let you take it off with you. You can send it to, I would like to know personally as well, but I also understand that we live in this environment where there's sort of like the independent media and then there's like the accepted formal mainstream media, right? And so I understand that unless this hard drive passes through that, that barrier, that impermeable most of the time barrier into quote unquote accepted media channels as opposed to like podcast independent media, that's not going to happen. So I said, guys, come on, get a copy of it. I'm more than happy.
I'm just saying I'm done playing games. When it comes to lab leak, we've got so much evidence pointing in the direction to research being funded at the Wuhan lab that was specifically working on gain-of-function coronaviruses to infect the lungs. And now we have a coronavirus from Wuhan that infects the lungs. Bro, I'm done. I'm not playing these stupid games anymore. The people understand what happened. At the very least, it was a lab leak. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.